Hello, my name is Jeff Bannon. Thank you very much for watching the first episode of Ask Shannon. Shannon is the managing director of the Leadership Solutions Group at TBM Consulting. Shannon, we've recently heard a lot about the challenges of coming back to full-time work, and it really got gasoline on the flame when Elon Musk made the statement about forcing everyone to come back. We know you've been working with our clients, helping them deal with questions of return to work full time, continue the remote that became so widespread during COVID, or some combination that we might call a hybrid approach. We asked LinkedIn members if they were dealing with these same issues and what questions they had about how they may want to handle the challenge of answering these in a competitive marketplace today. So let's dive into some of those questions, okay?
Let's do it.
In the market we're in right now, do we really have to consider remote work, and why?
I think you do. I don't think it's going away anytime soon. I think that the market has responded, I think, surprisingly well to the past 2 years of folks working remote. I think that individuals that didn't think they could work remote before realize that they can do so successfully now and are going to continue to demand it. So I think in order to stay competitive, I think companies are going to have to be flexible.
Yeah. Well, another one of our LinkedIn members asked the question, if we decide not to implement remote or a hybrid variation of work, how can we stay competitive with companies that in attracting talent when they're offering remote work?
If you're not going to allow the opportunity to work remote or hybrid, I think that, as unpopular as this comment's going to be, I think the companies are going to have to make sure that they are increasing compensation and benefits. You're going to have to offer something that everyone else is not. And those two things could be the most competitive behind the scenes of, if an individual has to drive in, especially with gas prices being what they are today, if they have to get daycare where they could have their children, at home for the summer versus putting them into camps, that's going to be a competitive disadvantage. I think that those two areas in driving individuals into the office are going to be the two things that companies are going to have to consider, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that leads well into another question sent in by a LinkedIn member, that remote working is a strong consideration for their company, but they're very concerned about how they're going to be able to train and onboard their employees effectively. And they're concerned most of all is, will the culture suffer by not having the face-to-face interactions and that is entailed by people working in the office?
So that question comes up to us a lot, and it's mostly coming up to us from the executive teams. Recently, I talked to a CEO that asked the question of, and it wasn't a manufacturing company, actually. They were a service organization, but it was the question of, how do I hire customer service specialists and an office manager and not have them in the office? And how do I consider doing both? And it's a good question. It's a thoughtful question. I think personally that, the one disadvantage is going to be the onboarding piece of this for companies that do go through and have a plethora of remote employees. I think that it's going to lengthen the onboarding process. I think that it's, instead of looking at it as 6 months, 3 to 6 months, I think it's going to have to be 6 to 12. I think it's going to have to be hit hard at the beginning, and then it's going to have to taper off as you get closer to those 12 months. And they're going to have touch points with several key people, not just their own department, but then multiple departments. And even here at TBM, we have the same setup. The majority of our employees are remote, and we're across the entire United States. So getting that interaction and engagement is something that we have to be very thoughtful about in order to make sure that they feel like they're part of the team and they get integrated into it. It's an ongoing process, and I don't know that it even stops at a year. Just personal opinion on that.
Yeah. Well, we're going to let's step backward for a second and take a look at a question that another LinkedIn member sent in, that is just asking about the basic benefits. What is the benefit of remote work, and what is the benefit for being on site with companies?
Well, the benefit is that you get to wear shorts in the summer. no one knows. We've seen all the memes on it, and of individuals that try to sneak through that the business casual look. I think having the flexibility to see their kids get off the school bus every day instead of having to commute an hour in, an hour home. It does come with, I think some negativity that you don't really turn things off. You're still working and you have a reason to pop into the office at night when it's just around the corner from your kitchen. But I think the flexibility that allows individuals, and I focus on kids, it's whether you have kids or you don't. The benefit is still there to have that flexibility and to be able to have some autonomy, that you're not always on. And you have the opportunity to get more done. We know executives that when we were working in office that, chose to work from home for several days in a row because they had so much to produce and get done in a short period of time. So those disruptions don't occur. I think that the negativity or if there's a disadvantage that comes behind it, it certainly is the employee engagement. And in companies where they have individuals that are coming into the office every day or into the plant every day, they need to be able to lead by example. So that hybrid structure is important. That on-site in presence is important because they're not going to pick up the phone and call those leaders. They're going to want to just pass them in the hallway and hear how they're doing, share what they did for the weekend. Those little touch points go a long way.
That makes sense. It makes so much sense. It would seem fair to ask, hybrid would seem to be the best of both worlds. It would seem to be a panacea. Why wouldn't we want to consider that for a solution?
The only disadvantage to hybrid, I do think it's a solid option. I think the best option is for companies to consider all three. I think that hybrid, the one disadvantage to it is that when companies are going through hiring new individuals to come to the organization, you are limiting yourself to those that are local or those that are willing to relocate. So if there's a company in New York that's going to run an ad for a senior leader, they're limiting themselves to just that talent pool. And I don't think that individuals are going to be as flexible relocating as what they have been in the past. I think this remote structure is going to squander the ability to relocate somebody from North Carolina to New Jersey or vice versa. I think that whole situation is going to change drastically. So I would think that would be the one harbor, if you will, that they're going to have to navigate.
Okay, Shannon, any final thoughts to share with our audience today?
So I do empathize, Jeff, with the predicament that companies are going through right now. And I do think it is a predicament. Each organization is going to have to evaluate the challenges that are going to come from the decisions that they make to the current workforce and the future workforce, the hiring process and the challenges that it can create for that. CareerBuilder just had a statistic out a month ago, I believe it was, that their on-site versus remote positions that are being posted, the remote positions are gaining 7 times more applicants. LinkedIn had something similar. And that challenge is going to just lengthen the hiring process and the talent pool that they're going to be able to acquire. So where there are challenges to the current workforce and the future workforce that every organization has to consider. I think the number one thing that I would encourage our clients and those that are not our clients to consider is to be flexible. Every organization and every employee has to be flexible from this stage on. We've all learned it the hard way, overnight during the pandemic. But even manufacturers are finding that there are additional gains that can be made by simply just creating flexibility. Where there used to be 1 shift or 3 shifts that they were standard hours that everyone had to adhere to, it's now a situation where they're creating flexible shifts even in between. They're creating an additional shift on the weekend that has hybrid hours, so they can attract, a working family, working parents that may have options to come in while their kids are in school. So there's a lot of different things that company can do, that center around what the health and mental the health is for those that are in their employees and the new ones they need to gain. So I think flexibility is the one thing I encourage everybody to just consider today.
Good advice. Well, thank you, Shannon, very much for your insights and advice on what is clearly a very, very timely and challenging topic in talent management at most companies today. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to the next episode of Ask Shannon.
Thanks, Jeff.